Airstream Vagabond has been living full-time since before COVID. Stay tuned to hear their story. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My family of four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. For those who choose to live the full-time RV life, there are a lot of decisions and a host of reasons to do so. Our guests today are Tim and Ursula of Airstream Vagabond, and they have been bouncing back and forth between Florida and the Pacific Northwest, not just to be chasing the weather, but for many more important reasons. Tim and Ursula, thank you so much for joining us on RV Out West.
Yep.
Absolutely.
First, just so we can kind of get an idea, will you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves, maybe how you guys met and kind of what's a little bit of the backstory?
Oh my goodness. Man, we've been together officially as a couple for longer than I can remember in most cases, to be honest. But in my past life, I was a restaurant operator for a national restaurant chain. I ended up meeting Ursula through her sister. She was going to nursing school at the time. We connected over snowboarding, outdoor sports in general. I guess the rest is history.
Actually, we met in Bellevue, Washington. So here in Washington State. And snowboarding was pretty much Snoqualmie, Stevens, and then we would take trips down to Oregon to go to Mount Hood. And that's actually where he proposed, was Mount Hood, getting off the ski lift.
Oh, that's nice. What a romantic way to do it.
I was a young romantic buck back there.
The chairlift, it would have been hard to get on your knees on a chairlift to do a proper proposal.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And then I put the ring on the wrong finger too. It was great. It was epic.
I mean, I'm just curious, do you still snowboard?
Yeah, we dabble here and there. We just got new gear this year, so we tried to. But when we first started our adventures, we definitely carried all of the gear we thought we'd need. So scuba gear, snowboarding gear, stand-up paddleboarding, bikes. I mean, all the outdoor stuff we thought we needed. And we quickly realized that it was more expensive for us to actually maintain everything appropriately than it benefited us to actually use them. So now we're back to renting things. Since we're in the Pacific Northwest, we've got family and friends in the area, and they end up holding a lot of our gear. So our winter gear is all stored at Ursula's sister's house. So we are able to use it now.
Mm-hmm.
So share with us a little bit about kind of what your life was like before going full-time.
I'd say that it was a typical 9 to 5 for Tim. And for me, as a nurse, it was 12-hour shifts, nighttime hours. And, working just working our asses off, really. Keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. Trying to make that income and maintain a lifestyle that we wanted. I guess at that time we were living in Washington, but eventually moved down to Portland for Tim's job. And then we were there for about 4 or 5 years. And then he got another promotion where we moved a little further south, and we found ourselves in Southern California, in Thousand Oaks, actually.
Okay, I used to live in Ojai.
So,
fantastic. Yeah.
I
married my bride in Ojai back in the day. So
beautiful
area down there.
And Ursula says we're working the 9 to 5, but I ended up being a director of operations for that same national restaurant chain. So my job was 24 hours a day, basically. I mean, plenty of times where we're heading to the beach on my quote unquote day off, and you get a phone call saying, hey, you need to drive 2 hours north of Bakersfield. And we have to turn around. She drops me back off at home. I go up to Bakersfield for a few days, and she goes back to the beach. So there was more than a handful of times of those experiences. And Yeah, it was a slow, I don't think it was there wasn't this moment where we're like, oh my gosh, we need to do this because it looks like the coolest thing in the world. It was just, we got tired of the rat race. We got tired of keeping up with the Joneses and, trying to live the life that other people wanted. When we were looking at each other going, wait, we're not experiencing peak happiness right this second. We've got big old house in California. We've got 2 more bedrooms than we actually need. Three more bedrooms than we actually need.
I think
two more garages than we actually needed.
Yeah.
So did one of you first kind of come up with the idea to say, hey, maybe we should look at living in an RV? And was it when whoever it was presented the idea to the other person, was the other person like, that's a cool idea, let's do it? Or was there a bit of like reluctance on the other person's whose maybe wasn't the initial idea?
I think it was more of just, okay, so, the RVs on the road, there's so many different brands, and I was just attracted to Airstreams and had never been in one, knew nothing about it, didn't grow up with an RV. I just thought they were just really cool. And with Tim's job, working 60 hours a week, let's say, there was plenty of opportunity to travel with him and stay in the hotel while he worked over the weekend. But an idea that came up was like, hey, why don't we get an RV, a small size, and the dog and I can come with you. We'll hang out at the beach while you go work. And
yeah, some of my restaurants were in, Ventura, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo.
Right there on the 101.
Some beautiful parts of the
Carpinteria, all that area. It's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. You pass on that 101 and you see all the RVs on the side of the road. We're like, oh, we can be right there. She could be hanging out on the beach. I'll go into work for the day. I'll come home. We'll scuba dive. We'll do whatever. It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up going to an Airstream dealership and kind of just looking around, realizing very quickly that we had a SUV that I think the tow capacity was like 4,000 pounds or 5,000 pounds. The salesman is like, oh yeah, you're going to be isolated to the single axle, the smallest Airstream there is, and you might be maxing out. So then we're going, okay, well, if we need to get a new truck, what should we get? They start talking us through some of that stuff. And then they're like, hey, come over here. Let us show you the classic. Let us show you the top of the line Airstream. And I think that was the moment for both of us that we sat down on the couch, looking straight down the Airstream. You could see the whole thing. And we were like, gosh, could you imagine living in this thing full time? I mean, it's got solid countertops, it's got hardwood throughout, nice floors, easy to maintain, 300 square foot living space. So it gets cleaned in an hour or less from top to bottom, 100%. No more big old mortgage. I mean, could you imagine? We'll both quit our jobs. I'll retire at 33 years old. It'll be amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Dream.
I think a lot of those, the dreams, but you don't really realize it until you actually do it. Then you have that realization of, wow, like, what kind of life was I living before? And it was a perfectly fine life. It was just, now we're experiencing life on the road and seeing the country. But I think that part of our story, yes, we were looking for an RV, and yes, we thought we would use it full-time or part-time, but it turned out that we made a decision to use this full-time because it kind of started with a phone call. And this phone call came from Tim's dad in Florida. And it was like, son, I've got some news for you. I got diagnosed with cancer and it's pancreatic. And I may have 3 months to live. But Tim and I looked at each other, and the thought that we shared together was, how do we want to live the rest of his father's life when we're 2,000 miles away?
Right.
And Tim is working 60 hours a week. We're both working full time. So that was pretty much the nail in the coffin, where we're like,
good terminology.
Right. Subtle.
That was the straw.
That was the straw.
Okay.
That was the straw.
So the decision was made. Yep. That was fine. I mean, that kind of was that finite point in your lives where something like that, you're like, okay, we're going to do this. I want to know what happened next, but I just wanted to clarify real quick. neither of you before doing this had any RVing experience, right? You're both brand new. Nobody had dumped a black
Zero.
tank before.
That's correct.
Any of that.
No, heck no.
Didn't know
I'm like, what's a black tank? You know,
no terminology. Boondocking? What does that mean?
Boondocking.
Right. Okay.
The greatest outdoors exposure that we had to camping was on the beach in Carpinteria, in a tent.
Okay.
You know, like that was it. You just go to a state park and you figure it out, but you've got home 30 minutes away if you forget something. You know, that was it. Like, we've never really gone into a national forest and just chopped down wood and lit a fire.
Well, you can't chop down wood in national forest.
I'm not saying chop down trees. I'm saying chop down wood. You know, find the scrap wood and chop it.
You get the call from your dad with really bummer news. That's the pivotal moment that you guys decide, hey, we're going to do this. So what do? Do you go to the Airstream dealership and say, okay, here's our money, put money down and sell the SUV? Or what was next? What were the steps?
Great question. No, there was a little bit more tax evasion that went into it, to be
That's
honest.
Fine.
So,
that's not a crime.
Yeah.
If there's any CPAs listening, just forget our friends here at Airstream Vagabond. They don't know what they're talking about.
That's right. Don't Google too hard what our last name is. No, we, yeah. So we basically ordered the Airstream. There was a little bit of waiting time that went into it. And in that process, ended up putting a notice with my work. She was a nurse, so, you know, her notice is a lot more forgiving than the kind of notice that I have to give. Okay. Bought the truck, bought the Airstream. So there's probably, I don't know, 3 to 6 months of planning of just like unwinding everything. The house sold pretty quick in California, nowhere near what it could sell for today, unfortunately, because this was back in 2018 that we did all this. I quit my job first. I actually remember sitting in the kitchen. We just signed the sales paper for the house. I'm no longer working. So we have 30 days to close on the house at that point. And we just start liquidating everything in the house. We're standing in the kitchen one night. Ursula is about to go into work, but she stopped and looked at me and was like, are you sure this is going to work out? Like, financially, is this going to work out? And I said, that's the wrong question to ask. Like, we already sold our house and we already bought the Airstream. We already bought the truck. Like, we're in this already and half of our stuff is already gone. What do you mean? Are you sure? Like, that's the cold feet. But I reassured her, no, if my math is right, this is what we'll get from the house. This is what I'll get from leaving work. You know, we'll end up debt free at the end of it all. So it'll work out for us, and we can, you know, drive across country and figure out life one day at a time.
And so how long have you guys been living full time now? Since 2018?
Yeah, I think so.
2018, 6 years. We've definitely crossed over that hump where, you know, people are like, oh my gosh, you're so brave. And we're over that hump where now it's like, man, you guys don't have anything else better going for you?
That's funny.
It's been 6 years.
It's been 6 years. Holy
when are you going
smokes.
back to a house?
Yeah. When are you guys going to grow up and actually live like adults?
So how has living in an RV been different than kind of what your initial expectations were?
Oh, there's been a lot of adjustments, but I mean, I wouldn't go back to where we came from as far as sticks and bricks. But, you know, a good example, a simple example is laundry. You know, some RVs have it built in, but we don't. And it's kind of like going back to college days where you're bringing your laundry to a laundromat and
showing up to mom and dad's house
you gotta
hey,
save your quarters.
Can I get some laundry done?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff I think is it's all adjustments, obviously. You know, another question that we end up getting asked is like, man, how can you live in 300 square foot with your wife? And I'm like, dude, I love her. Like, it's pretty easy when you enjoy the person you're living with. So yeah, that's that's that. No big learning curves, to be honest with you. I mean, I think it's respecting each other's space a lot more, and absolutely living outside more than you live inside. That's one of the keys to success, I think. So where most people, especially people that work from home, might stay indoors for 24 hours at a time, we try to be outside constantly. Like Ursula is able to drive herself to work, but I enjoy driving her to work because that gets me out of the house and going to do something else.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like living in a studio.
Yeah.
Just a small space.
Right.
You know, you gotta.
It's like living in a shoebox.
Yeah, or that.
If you have any suggestions or a tip for weekenders on how they can simplify their preparation and use their RVs more, please head over to rvoutwest.com and share with us by using the link question.
I'm curious, how are you guys earning a living while you're living this full-time life? I mean, Ursula, I understand you're a nurse, so, and then Tim, what are you kind of doing now? Are you retired, or do you have a little side hustle or something you're doing on the side? Kind of tell me about that.
So I do a number of different things. Number one, I'm the what is it? Splendid Daddy, Sweet and Low Daddy. Is it? It's basically a sugar daddy, but it's fake sugar. Like I don't got any money, so it's the Splendid Daddy. No,
that needs to be a shirt. That needs to be a shirt.
Yeah, I'm 100% Splendid Daddy. So I do deep value investing is how I explain it. So I do work on the stock market. I don't do quick flips or trades. I do a lot of research on companies. So a lot of reading, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of research, just understanding brands and figuring out if it's worth dumping a pile of money into them and just sitting on it for a couple of 3 years. I think that's the 50,000 foot view of what I do on okay. That. I also have a side hustle. So we do have a photography and videography business that we work with outdoors brands, producing content for their social media. And that's the Airstream Vagabond handle that we're doing some of that work on. But most of our work is obviously done offline. And then I spend a lot of my time fixing and working on the Airstream, maintaining things, fixing all the problems that she doesn't know she has. And then, enjoying life.
Good. Okay.
Cracking a beer at noon and taking a nap right after.
It is pretty
AKA
perfect.
retired life.
Yeah, it's the semi-retired life.
That's right.
He did tell me when we were in our younger years that he would like to retire before he's 40. And I think he made that happen.
Nailed it.
That's pretty amazing. And then Ursula, are you doing like travel nursing gigs at various different hospitals around the area, or you have are you employed W-2 kind of style?
Employed at various hospitals around the country. Currently, I'm working here in Washington at a local hospital. I have worked over in Florida and Michigan, California, NorCal, as a travel nurse. I think with the whole COVID thing, for me, I did work part of the COVID, but I also did take some time off. And we started heading west from Michigan, where I was at a COVID unit. And I think during that time, we kind of got a little bit lucky. It sucks that COVID happened, but we did get a little bit lucky running into Yellowstone National Park, where there was no one there.
Wonderful. You had the whole place to yourself.
We had exactly.
Yeah, it was just us and the bison.
Yeah. And I think those little breaks helped me get through COVID because you're not constantly, doing what you're doing with everything that's going on, and you can forget about what's happening in the world when you're not doing that and you're disconnected.
Yeah, so a little bit more of the travel nursing, the deeper dive is she ends up working 13-week contracts. So in between the contracts, she can take as much time off as she'd like, or as little time off as she'd like. So the current stint that she's on, we've been at the same hospital for almost a year already, which is as long as the government will let us work somewhere remote before we have to go somewhere else, before you basically have to declare residency somewhere, right? So yeah, that's been helpful, that if she finds a hospital that she's not a fan of, she's able to to finish out her contract and then go, all right, deuces, I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely helpful to have that kind of career when you're on the road, is you can be anywhere.
Right. So let's talk about some of your adventures now. That's a good segue. So you bought the Airstream and kind of went out to Florida to spend time with family. And then sounds like you went to Michigan. And so tell me about some of the...
Been all over.
So tell me a bit about some of your adventures. I guess maybe share, let's say, the top 3 highlights.
Yep. So lucky for me, I was blessed to have 5 years with my dad. So even after his cancer diagnosis, pancreatic cancer is notorious for getting you quick. So the standard prognosis is 3 to 6 months to live, because it usually doesn't show symptoms until you're stage 4 already. And he got it. He caught it accidentally. So we had the ability to go out to Florida. First highlight for me was we left California, actually went straight north to see her family in Washington, because we're only, we're halfway there basically. Yeah. It's a quick drive. We got there maybe 2 to 3 days, like I said. Saw them for a little bit. And then we went to Banff, Canadian Rockies, right after that. And then went all the way down to Florida to see Dad and hang out with them. So that was probably my first highlight, was us sitting on the couch of the Airstream going, okay, cool, everything's sold. What's next? And we're kind of Googling and came across a picture of Lake Louise in Banff. And if people aren't familiar, this is glacier blue water with giant mountains all around it, a wonderful looking Four Seasons or one of those fancy hotels at the tail end of it. It is an absolute spectacular place. And we saw that picture and went, we should find this place. Wherever this is, let's go. So by the time we got up to Washington, we're going, holy smokes, Banff is only like right there. Like we could get there in another day. So that's what led us up to there. So we quickly learned that first probably 3 months that we're on the road, because we were just anxious young bucks back then. Let's limit the amount of driving that you do. We got all sorts of tips and tricks for limiting driving and not killing yourself on day one. But then the first part of our trips, we were like going 12, 13-hour days of driving and just getting to places, because, it's what you do. You get to places and they eat a lot.
But that's a get to places when you have a 9 to 5 gig. You only get 2 weeks of vacation. I understand
that's what we're
in your situation. You can slow down a little bit and enjoy.
Yeah, but it took us a while to figure that out. Like we weren't 100% certain of what to do with ourselves with that much time off.
Right.
So yeah, that was my first highlight. I guess. Do you want to share one?
Yeah, I mean, over the past 6 years, I think that my favorite highlight has been, the most recent one is Alaska. And that has been a journey that was totally unforgettable. Went there with a few other people in their rigs. And there's so much to explore up there. Going one time doesn't mean you'll never be back. We're going to go back again.
Yep.
There's so many. The country has so many beautiful places, and depending on when you go during the season and festivities, and if you're not really a big planner like us, you kind of run into things that are quirky and unique that you just don't find if you're focused on getting to A, B, and C. The country is just an amazing place.
Yep. So I guess that would be another highlight, would be all the roadside attractions that you end up seeing along the way. My favorite one that I could talk for hours about is called House on the Rock. And it's literally this house that this guy built on a rock and just charged people a nickel to tour at one point. But it's turned into like the world's largest collection of like anything you could think of. And it's the only place in the world where you can see like a submarine engine, the country's largest chandelier, and the world's largest, a merry-go-round that's in the same room. I'm like, what?
Wait, where is this place? It sounds amazing.
It's in
It's in Wisconsin.
Outside of Madison, Wisconsin. We
Yeah,
found it.
there
We
you
were
go.
just looking at a map and we just saw this little red dot that said House on the Rock. We said, let's go figure that out.
Yeah.
So we took a 50-mile detour and spent all day at House on the Rock, and I'd go again.
And we found this on, we carry a paper map, Rand McNally, and that's the red dot Tim was talking about. We didn't use any Google or any internet. We were like,
Yeah.
let's go there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
What's
that's
this all
so
about?
Cool.
I think
I
my
love finding
favorite,
things like that.
my favorite was the Spam Museum in Mitchell.
Oh, up in Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are you a spam eater?
Yeah.
we are.
We're both born in Hawaii and grew up on that stuff. So
So we got the
Okay,
T-shirt
yeah.
and a can of Spam.
and yeah, you are looking and listening to the people. The reason why Costco carries a 24 pack of Spam is because of us.
Okay, good.
We keep
You're
on
solely
buying.
responsible
We
for
are
keeping them in business. That's
Yeah, Hormel, if
Costco
you're looking for
owes
any,
you.
yeah, if
Yep.
Hormel needs a sponsorship, like we got you, man. Come call us.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's good to know. I love it. Now, it can't all be roses on the road.
Oh,
There has to have been some times where, for lack of better words, it hit the fan.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the unfortunate low points that maybe the memorable ones that have
I've got a very specific
a
one.
lasting stain.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about
well,
it.
I mean, it's certainly not a lasting stain, but things break in Airstreams or in every RV. Things break, and one year we had something break, and we replaced it or we fixed it. This was in like October. Okay, so we're approaching winter, and we end up going to another really cool spot in California called Alabama Hills. This is
I'm familiar. It's a beautiful area.
It is a beautiful area, and
Stunning.
we went in November, and it was cold. It was probably 20 degrees, and the thing that broke ended up breaking again, like in that same area a month later after we had already gotten it. And this isn't November, this is December that we went, because it was a week before Christmas when it broke again. So then we're going, okay, we're freezing, end up driving into Death Valley because we're like, the hottest place on earth absolutely can't be that hot during the winter. And it ended up being 70 degrees in December, so it was pleasant. Ended up going to Vegas to see my brother and figure out, how to fix the furnace, essentially. It's not always roses and butterflies situation for me. Is like things break, unfortunately, and there's always something that can be done to get it fixed. It's just a matter of how many phone calls do you have to make, how many emails do you have to send, and
how many YouTube videos do you have to watch?
Yeah,
YouTube University.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, I carry duct tape and screwdrivers, and there's a Home Depot close to me somewhere, and you fix things or you patch things until you could get a permanent fix. So that's kind of my situation.
I've got a story that has never left my head, and it happened very early in the beginning of our travels. And I don't remember where we were. I think somewhere in California, but we needed a place to stay and we had nowhere to go. This place that we found was a casino, and didn't really do any homework on the parking lot, or is it busy, or is it in like a busy area. So we found this.
Oh, I remember this.
We found this casino, pulled into it, and we're like, wow, this is actually really busy, and the parking lot's not that big. Where are we going to turn around? There was no place for us to park. It really wasn't RV friendly when we thought it was. So we decided to leave, and we had like the worst time exiting out the only exit that was on the steep hill, and we have a 30-foot plus our truck, so we're like 52 feet tip to tip. And I'm out of the truck looking at the rear end. He's trying to get out. It's a busy road. The rear end, unfortunately, we have to drag it out. It's hitting the bottom of the driveway. We're scraping the fins and the back bumper.
Oh.
You can just hear it.
There's other people like getting out of the car helping us, because again, that 52 feet, it's a lot longer than you think when you're in a tight parking spot.
That was,
and it's the number one thing the number one fear for us is like, okay, who's going to dent the aluminum first? And I'm going, I don't want to be that person. So
it was not only that, it was the end of the day. We were tired of driving because it was another long day. We had no idea where we were going. We pulled off to the curb finally after we got out of the lot, and we're just, trying to figure it out, but we're both really exhausted.
Dude, that was the time though that we ended up like turning a bad situation into a better situation.
No, you're right, because
we ended up going. We found this is a Saturday going into a Sunday, so we're like, banks are closed, so we end up in a bank parking lot, just like we just need something for the night. This is in San Francisco, right?
Was it?
Yeah, it was outside of San Francisco, so no parking anywhere. So we end up in a bank parking lot, and probably 6 o'clock in the morning, we hear car revving. Maybe 7 o'clock in the morning, car revving. And I look outside, and there's this like exotic car meet that's happening. And there's probably, 100 Porsches, Lamborghinis, and Ferraris just setting up around us. Yeah. We're like, this is sweet. So, we get like homemade barbecue, like people are just out, caterers are there feeding people. There's coffee, there's cars.
Yeah. So you're right. It did turn out. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I really want to dive into the Pacific Northwest too. So Ursula, it sounds like, are you raised, born, have you lived in Washington State before, or is this?
Yeah.
I think you've alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell me, what's your kind of
how I got here?
The tie to the PNW.
Yeah. How I got here. Born in Hawaii, but moved to the Pacific Northwest when I was like maybe 10 years old. So I did go to.
And where did you move to? Where was kind of your growing up area?
It was Bellevue, Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. Went to Bellevue High, went to the college, family's here. But our home base really isn't here.
It's wherever we park it.
It's kind of wherever we park it. We do have things over at his mom's house in Florida. Mm-hmm. So we do have this back and forth pattern between East and West Coasts that we sort of bounce around with. But we've been in the PNW for the last year, actually. And this is the longest we've had a stationary spot for as long as we've been on the road is here.
Yeah. And let me tell you too, the Pacific Northwest, there's out of all the places we've probably been to 45 states outside of Alaska. The Pacific Northwest and the lower 48 is probably one of the most magical places we've been to in general. It's the most diverse area that you could find in the entire country, as far as I'm concerned, where, if you want to see a volcano, you could see a volcano. You want to swim in the ocean, you could swim in the ocean. You want to hike and swim in the lake, you could swim in the lake. It's really special here. We aren't ever tired of it. So we always find ourselves coming back to the Pacific Northwest every summer because I don't know if you've ever talked about it, but it's the best kept secret.
It is an absolute magical.
It's beautiful.
Magic.
Like, especially west of the Cascades. If you could stay west of the Cascades, that's going from Washington to Oregon. You could see on a map, it's greener than it is out east. But that's where all the magic happens, as far as I'm concerned. We love it.
See, I live on the wet side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often will drag my trailer over the Cascades to go chase the sun.
Yep. We found ourselves for the past, call it 5 years, outside of this past year, 2023 to 24, we've actually spent summers in the Pacific Northwest, either Washington or Oregon, and then winters down in like Central or South Florida, because it doesn't snow and it doesn't get it. It's basically how summers are in the Pacific Northwest. That's how winters are in Florida. Never really freezes down there. It's great, but summers down there are horrible. So why would you want to do it? So we're out by spring and coming in after fall for Florida, basically. Yeah.
So where are you guys posting up then? Are you guys like Thousand Trails members and doing the kind of 2 weeks in, 1 week out and kind of bouncing around at different campgrounds? Are you mooch docking at your sister's place and staying in the driveway? Kind of.
Yeah.
Where are you guys parking the Airstream?
It depends.
The mooch docking is very familiar with the sister's driveway. We have done that, and her husband actually put in a 50 amp for us, so that way we have like the ability to stay a little longer. But right now with the nursing contract, we tend to stay at RV parks. So that way we have the full hookups and the full amenities for our day-to-day kind of thing when I'm working. But right now we're in Black Diamond, which a lot of people don't know where that's at. And like
I do.
you do, yeah. Geographically, I would say Black Diamond is a 90-minute drive from Rainier. That's the east entrance to Rainier, or 90 minutes that direction, or 90 minutes towards our favorite place in Olympic Peninsula. So we're like right in the middle. Or 45 minutes from the airport is another good reference.
Yeah, or hour from Seattle, hour from Bellevue or Bothell, where her family's at. So it's not central to everything, but it's central. You know, it's close to her hospital. That's what really matters.
Yeah, that's the important thing, for sure.
As long as we're close to work.
What has been your favorite places to go RVing and exploring here in the PNW?
Oh, Olympic Peninsula so far.
Yep.
We spent a lot of time out there.
Yeah, the Olympic Peninsula, so I met Ursula in Bellevue, like we said, almost 20 years ago, right? And I don't think I ever spent much time at all on the Olympic Peninsula when I was living in Bellevue. All of our time was spent in Seattle or the greater Bellevue area, never really leaving the metro. So like discovering the Olympic Peninsula is amazing. It's the home of Olympic National Park, if you're not familiar with it, or if the listeners aren't familiar with it, and it is the entirety of the peninsula. So at the north tip, you've got Port Angeles and Sequim. Those are the two kind of major areas. It's where the lavender fields are. So if you're on social media and you ever see a picture of lavender fields in Washington, it's on the Olympic Peninsula. On the west side of the peninsula is the rainforests. Beautiful glacier runoffs, feeding rivers there. So you can find a ton of camping out in like the Forks area where all the werewolves and vampires are.
Yeah.
And then we love the entrance to the Olympic Peninsula. Gig Harbor is one of our favorite towns, just a small little boating town, quaint and beautiful. Yeah, I think that's probably our favorite area in Washington State for sure.
Have there been any places here in the PNW that you've not yet made it to that's on your list of to go see and play and enjoy?
Yeah,
my
there's
gosh.
so we hope to this summer hit up North Cascades and check out places like Diablo Lake and anything around that area.
Yeah.
I don't even think I've been there when I was living here, to be honest.
So again, talking about like we're familiar with this place for the past 20, 25 years or more, right? If you want to give up your age. I've never been to North Cascades National Park. Never have I ever. So that's definitely the place that we want to go. We know already that the seasons happen late when you're in the mountains. So like we're positioned close to Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier National Park has the most incredible wildflowers up there during, there's 1 or 2 weeks that's peak. But that doesn't happen. We were up there last week and it's not even peak yet. So this is, we have to wait another week to get to the end of July to be able to go up there and check it out again. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And we know that once we're peak there, that North Cascades will be shortly behind or right around the same time. So looking beginning August.
As we're kind of beginning to wrap up here, what's been your greatest reward for both of you living full time and choosing to live this lifestyle? What's been your greatest reward?
I think for me, number one is we've prioritized family being our number one. So being mobile allows us, and also not working as much, it allows us that ability to get on a plane if we need to, or just bring our home with us and spend time with family, because that is absolutely our number one priority. Work doesn't come first or anything else. It's just spending time with our loved ones.
Yeah, I think I'll echo that too, that spending time with friends, family, people that we've met over the years, and being able to spend quality, genuine time is much different than I'm on my quick vacation. Let me go in and out. You know, being able to actually spend night after night, day after day with people is something special. So in any given year, we can see our entire family just doing a big loop around the country, because unfortunately our families are kind of spread everywhere. And then the fact that, we're working because we want to, not because we have to, because we got out of the crushing debt and kind of getting out of the rat race. I think I'm proud of that transition that we've made. It has definitely led to a much more enjoyable life. Living in a smaller space has also enabled us to taper back on the things we buy, which in turn helps with the debt challenge for a lot of people. That anything we buy, it's where are we going to put it? What are we going to do with that? Does it have multiple uses? Like it's just a bigger thought process that goes into that. So I'm proud that we've made that transition, and we can look from the outside looking in at people around us. If they ask how do they make the transition, and being able to help them with some of those kind of tips and tricks.
Well, what is next on the horizon for Ursula and Tim of Airstream Vagabond?
I think continuing forward on the road and, flipping a coin.
Do we go left or right?
Do you have any trips like future, like, when the rain starts coming mid-October, where are you guys taking off to? Are you going back to Florida?
That's still in discussion. I think that there is a big possibility we may stay another winter here in the Pacific Northwest. There is also a possibility that when it comes springtime, we'll head back up to Alaska.
And then where can listeners find out more and learn and follow along in your adventures? Please tell us.
Well, we're Airstream Vagabond on Instagram, and we post all of our adventures and hopefully inspire others to kind of get out there and, be out in nature and do things that you've never done before.
Yeah, and if they're not on Instagram, you could always message us on Instagram, but they could reach us on airstreamvagabond@gmail.com as well. If there's any questions or comments or concerns or anything, they're free to email us too.
That's wonderful. Well, Ursula and Tim, thank you guys so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It has been wonderful speaking with you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Brooks.
It's fun.
You can now shoot me a text, and those that have done so already, thank you. Just click on the link in the description, right there in your podcast app with this episode. If you have a question about RVing, a topic you'd like me to cover, or if you just want to say hello, please go ahead and send me a text. Thank you again for listening to RV Out West. I sincerely appreciate it. If you haven't already done so, will you kindly give RV Out West a follow on Facebook and Instagram and join in on the conversation? In next week's Pit Stop, we're going to chat all about what is camping. Our friends over at RV Miles chatted about this, and it got me thinking. In today's day and age, there are no finite answers, but you'll have to wait until next week to get the full scoop. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.